At my parents' 40th anniversary dinner, my Aunt Delia, owner of exactly 0 restaurants but endless opinions, stood up in her glittering red dress, clinked her glass, and smiled at me like a cat about to spit out a mouse. To family, she said, and to finally putting Grandma Lila's diner into the right hands, my sons. Then she turned, eyes locked on me, and added, and to my niece Mara Lee, the family leech who's had her fill. For the record, my name's Mara Lee, 28 years old, head chef at a farm-to-table cafe in town and the only one in this family who kept Grandma's recipes alive after she passed. The room went dead silent. Forks hovered midair. My mom's smile froze. I just stared at her, tilted my head, and asked, "All done with the performance, Auntie? If you've ever had a family member publicly humiliate you and think they could get away with it, stick around, this one's for you. And hey, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss how I turned this night into her biggest regret." The night had started like something out of a Hallmark postcard. My parents' backyard was strung with warm Edison bulbs, the kind that make everyone look like they've aged backward 10 years. The air smelled like roasted rosemary chicken and fresh pies cooling on the buffet table. My dad, a retired mechanic, was laughing with old union buddies. My mom, the heart of every church bake sale in town, was wearing the pearl necklace Grandma Lila left her. Grandma's diner, Lila's table, had been the family's pride for decades. She built it from scratch after Grandpa died, and I practically grew up in that kitchen, standing on a milk crate to stir pancake batter before school. When she got sick, I moved back home, balanced 2 jobs, and spent nights at her bedside. I kept the diner running, paid the bills, and even covered my parents' mortgage one brutal winter when the pipes burst. Aunt Delia, she was the sister who swooped in only when there were cameras or cash on the table. The last time she set foot in the diner, she complained about the coffee and left without paying. But she loved the idea of owning it, mostly so she could plaster her name on something people already respected. That's why, when she made her little announcement tonight, it wasn't just petty. It was a direct slap at years of work she never lifted a finger for. I could feel my brother Ty shift uncomfortably 2 tables over. My dad's hand froze halfway to his glass, and me, I just filed it away because I knew something no one else did. Grandma had trusted me with more than just her recipes. And before the night was over, Aunt Delia was going to learn exactly what that meant. I didn't storm out. I didn't cry. I waited. Waited until the last toast was made, the last slice of pie was served, and the last relative had hugged my mom at the gate. Delia left early. Of course she did, off to celebrate with her son, probably already planning how to redecorate my kitchen. By 11 p.m., the fairy lights in the backyard were still glowing, but I was in my old bedroom, door locked, the smell of roast chicken replaced by the faint scent of cedar from my grandmother's hope chest at the foot of the bed. I knelt down, turned the brass key, and lifted the lid. Inside, beneath neatly folded quilt squares, was a steel lockbox. Grandma had given it to me the week before she passed. "You'll know when to use it, Mara," she'd whispered. The key slid in easy. The lid popped open to a stack of documents I knew by heart. The notarized transfer of Lila's table into my name. A life insurance policy on the diner, premiums paid up for 3 more years by me. The loan pre-approval papers Delia and her husband, Victor, had filed, using the diner as collateral for a renovation project I'd never agreed to. I stared at that last one for a long moment, tracing the ink where my name should have been. They'd left it blank, planning to slide it under my nose later, maybe when I was too polite, or too tired to say no. Not tonight. I grabbed my tablet, logged into the bank portal Grandma had made me co-signer on, and with one click, froze every cent of the renovation fund Delia thought she'd get next week. A red banner flashed across the screen. "Funds unavailable. Account locked. Then I opened the insurance account, removed Delia and Victor as beneficiaries, and set all notifications to forward to my personal email. By midnight, their golden ticket had turned to dust, and no one outside this room had the faintest idea yet. I closed the lockbox, slid it back under the quilt, and leaned against the bed frame, listening to the quiet hum of the house. Somewhere in town, Delia was probably laughing over her little toast. She had no idea the countdown had already started. The first crack showed up less than 12 hours later. At 8:15 a.m., I was sipping coffee at the kitchen counter when my phone lit up with Victor's number. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, a text. "Bank says the funds are frozen. Did you touch the account?" By 8:20, the contractor they'd bragged about all night was blowing up the family group chat. "Need the deposit today or I walk. Cruise already booked elsewhere next week." I didn't reply. I just took another slow sip of coffee. By 9:00, my mom was calling, and unlike Victor, she didn't waste time. "Mara, whatever's going on between you and your aunt, fix it. She's saying you've sabotaged a loan for the diner." Her loan, for her son, using my property I cut in. "We're family," she insisted, like that magic word erased contracts and signatures. "Your grandmother wouldn't want bad blood." I almost laughed. Grandma had explicitly told me to keep Delia's hands off the diner. But I didn't argue. Instead, I gave my mom the same line I'd repeat to everyone else that week. "If she apologizes to me, publicly, for what she said last night, I'll consider unfreezing anything." My mom sighed, the long, weary kind that says she'd rather smooth things over than pick sides. "You know she won't do that." "Then she knows where we stand," I said, and hung up. By lunchtime, the family text chain had turned into a circus. My cousin Delia's son was posting crying emojis. My brother Ty dropped a single popcorn gif. Even Dad, who hates phones, sent a to the group. And me, I was in no hurry. This was only the first domino. By Wednesday morning, Delia decided if she couldn't get the money, she'd go for my reputation. I woke up to my phone buzzing nonstop. Screenshots were already flooding in from friends. A Facebook post on her page with a smiling selfie at some brunch spot, captioned, "Some people forget where they came from. Sad when family turns their back. #ungrateful #family first." And of course, she tagged me. The comments were a greatest hits album of small-town gossip. "Mara always thought she was better than the rest of us. Your grandma would be ashamed." I didn't comment. I didn't like. I didn't even open the app. Instead, I opened a folder on my laptop labeled "Just in Case." Inside, 3 years' worth of diner tax records, all neatly scanned. And right there in black and white were the creative bookkeeping choices Delia had been making when she helped at the register. Cash sales that never made it to the deposit slip, catering orders paid under the table. At 10 a.m., I drafted an email to the Lila's Legacy Community Fund, the local charity that had awarded Delia a $15,000 community leadership scholarship last year. I attached the tax documents and simply wrote, "As a board supporter, I can no longer endorse this recipient as a representative of my grandmother's name." By Thursday afternoon, Delia's name was gone from their website. The scholarship rescinded. The leadership award she'd been bragging about in every conversation, quietly pulled. I didn't announce it. I didn't tell a soul, but I knew she'd find out soon enough. And when she did, she'd know exactly who pulled the thread and how easily the rest could unravel. By Friday morning, the diner's morning rush was in full swing. Line cooks shouting orders, the smell of bacon and coffee rolling out the door. I asked to see the senior staff in the back office. These were the people who'd kept Lila's table alive through snowstorms, supply shortages, and yes, even Delia's help. Joe, the head cook, had been here since before I could walk. Ruth, the night waitress, still remembered the day Grandma installed the first pie warmer. I laid out the papers on the table, a purchase agreement, a profit-sharing plan, and a deed transfer. "I'm not selling this place to a developer," I told them. "I'm selling it to you for $1. You'll run it as a worker-owned co-op. Keep the recipes, keep the name, and keep taking care of the customers the way Grandma did." Joe's eyes went wide. "Mara, this is yours," I finished. "And there's one more thing." I slid over a separate folder, Lila's Legacy Pension Fund. "Every senior staff member gets a small retirement stipend, funded by the insurance policy I've been paying into." Ruth's hands shook as she signed. Joe took off his cap and pressed it to his chest before putting his name on the line. By 11:00 a.m., it was done. The diner was no longer mine, and more importantly, it would never be Delia's. Outside, the lunch crowd was just starting to line up. I stepped into the sunlight, contract folder under my arm, and for the first time since Grandma died, I felt the weight lift clean off my shoulders. Somewhere across town, Delia still thought she was fighting me for control. She had no idea the game was already over, and she'd lost to the very people she'd always treated like background furniture. That night, I stopped by my parents' house. The living room still smelled faintly of the anniversary flowers, now starting to wilt in their vases. Dad was in his recliner, flipping channels without watching, Mom in the kitchen drying the same coffee mug over and over. My brother Ty was at the dining table, rifling through a stack of old mail. "You know," he said without looking up, "Delia's been calling all day. Something about you ruining her life." I didn't answer. I just dropped the contract folder on the table. Ty reached for it, but a smaller envelope slid out, one I'd forgotten was tucked inside. He opened it, frowning at the contents. "What's this?" he asked, holding up a bundle of hospital invoices. Mom turned, her face blanching when she recognized the letterhead. "Cardiology Center of Green Bay." "Those are paid in full," Ty said slowly. "By you." I nodded. 2 years ago, when Mom's insurance wouldn't cover the specialist, I used my savings, then kept paying the follow-ups every quarter. That's why I never fought you about skipping vacations or fixing my car. I was already covering this. Mom's hands tightened around the mug. "Mara, why didn't you say anything?" "Because it wasn't about making anyone owe me. But I'm done watching Delia bleed this family dry while pretending she's the victim." Dad muted the TV and looked straight at me. "You did right." It was just 3 words, but coming from him, they landed heavier than any toast or apology I'd heard all week. For the first time in days, the house felt steady, like maybe the balance had finally shifted back where it belonged. The next morning, I swung by Lila's table to drop off some recipe cards for the new co-op board. The lunch rush hadn't started yet. The place was quiet except for the clink of coffee cups and the low hum of the grill. That's when the door banged open. Delia stormed in, eyes red, voice pitched high enough to turn every head. "You think this is funny, selling my diner to a bunch of waitresses and fry cooks?" Joe stepped out from behind the counter, arms crossed. "Our diner," he corrected, "and we're keeping it exactly the way Lila wanted." Ruth appeared from the back, wiping her hands on her apron, and moved to stand beside me. Then 2 more staff members joined, forming a quiet line of bodies between Delia and the register. Delia's gaze darted to the front window and froze. Hanging above the glass was a brand-new sign, painted in the same looping script Grandma used on her recipe cards. "Lila's table owned by the people who keep it alive." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. For once, she had no toast, no speech, no audience to clap along. Just the reflection of herself in the glass, standing on the outside looking in. I didn't need to say a word. I watched her leave without touching the doorframe. like even the wood might burn her. People talk about keeping family traditions alive, like it means swallowing every insult just to keep the peace. But Grandma taught me something different. Tradition is about protecting what's worth passing down and knowing when to cut loose the ones who only want to take. So I did. If you've ever had to draw a line with your own family, it's not about revenge. It's about freedom. Thanks for listening to my story. And if you want more real-life tales about standing your ground, hit subscribe and stick around, because the next one, it's a doozy.